The endless void of space stretched before High Commander Vex-Tul's 4 eyes as he stood at the observation deck of the Zarkonian Empire's flagship, the Celestial Dominance. His scaled fingers drummed against the reinforced glass, creating a rhythmic tap-tap-tap-tap that matched his racing heartbeats. By the 7 moons of Zarkon, he muttered, mandibles clicking in agitation. How did we not see this coming? Behind him, the holoscreen displayed the latest reports from across the galaxy, each one more devastating than the last. The Zarkonian Empire, once the undisputed masters of 17 star systems, now reduced to damage control and emergency meetings. All because they'd made the monumentally stupid decision to let humans test their ultimate weapon. High Commander Lieutenant Krixvar approached, her bioluminescent spots pulsing with anxiety. The Council demands another update. Vex-Tul let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan. Tell them what they already know, Lieutenant. Tell them their perfect weapon, their galaxy render, their pride and joy that took 50 cycles to develop, has been. Pause for dramatic effect ... improved. He spat out that last word like it was toxic waste from the mines of Nexus 6. The weapon had been perfect, or so they thought. The culmination of the finest Zarkonian engineering, combining quantum mechanics with dark matter manipulation. It was supposed to be their trump card, their way to finally establish dominance over those annoying Centaurians with their ridiculously advanced coffee machines. Perhaps Krixvar ventured carefully. We should have listened to Chief Scientist Mork-Tal when he suggested more thorough testing. Vex-Tul waved his secondary arms dismissively. Oh yes, because that's exactly what the Council wanted to hear. That their 12 trillion credit investment needed more testing. Besides, who could have predicted that those hairless bipes would understand quantum mechanics well enough to? He couldn't even finish the sentence. The memory of that day was still too fresh, too painful. The day when Madison Blake, that insufferably clever human engineer, had taken one look at their weapon and said with that annoying upward curl of her lips that humans called a smirk, "Nice starter kit you got here. Mind if we take it for a spin?" The Council, in their infinite wisdom, and by infinite wisdom, he meant infinite arrogance, had agreed. After all, what harm could a species that still used combustion engines in some of their vehicles possibly do to the most advanced weapon in the known galaxy? Sir Krixvar interrupted his thoughts, her spots now pulsing in emergency patterns. We're receiving new reports. The humans have. They've... Just say it, Lieutenant. Rip the bandage off, as those humans would say. They've begun mass production. Vex-Tul's exoskeleton nearly cracked from the tension. Of course they have, he said, letting out a sound that might have been a laugh if it wasn't so close to a sob. Because why wouldn't they? And let me guess, they've made it better, faster, and probably added cup holders. The lieutenant's silence was answer enough. Well, Vex-Tul turned back to the window, watching as another diplomatic vessel jumped into hyperspace, no doubt carrying more demands and complaints from their allies. At least we've learned one valuable lesson from all this. Sir, never, ever underestimate a species that invented something called duct tape and actually uses it to fix spaceships. Approaching vessel is showing no signs of hostility, announced Flight Controller Brick Zan, his tentacles rippling across the control panel. Though I must note, High Commander, their ship appears to be held together by some form of adhesive strips. High Commander Vex-Tul's mandibles twitched in barely concealed amusement. The human vessel, dubbed Prometheus Rising, looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts and optimism. Patches of different colored metal dotted its hull. And yes, there were indeed strips of silvery material visible at various joints. Remind me again why we're entertaining these. Visitors Commander Rexnar drawled from his position by the tactical display. His crystalline exoskeleton sparkled under the bridge lights, a trait that had earned him numerous admirers but zero respect from Vex-Tul. Because, dear Commander, Vex-Tul replied, voice dripping with artificial sweetness, the Galactic Council, in their infinite wisdom, decided that all spacefaring races should be given a chance to admire our technological superiority. The bridge crew snickered. Their latest achievement, the Galaxy Render, would certainly put these humans in their place. Nothing like a planet-killing superweapon to remind the lesser races who really ruled the stars. The docking procedure was almost painful to watch. The human ship wobbled slightly, its maneuvering thrusters firing in short, uneven bursts. "Are they drunk?" someone whispered, generating another round of poorly concealed laughter. When the airlock finally cycled open, Vex-Tul had prepared himself for many things. He had not, however, prepared for Madison Blake. The human engineer strode onto the bridge like she owned it, her dark hair pulled back in what appeared to be another example of their mysterious adhesive technology. She wore a jacket covered in patches, actual patches, and carried what looked like an ancient data tablet held together with more of that silvery strip material. "Sweet setup you got here," she said, whistling appreciatively. "Though your quantum stabilizers could use a tune-up, I could hear them whining from 2 decks away." Rexnar's crystalline form actually crackled with indignation. "Our quantum stabilizers are perfectly calibrated." "Sure, if you enjoy wasting 15% of your power output on harmonic resonance," Blake replied, not even looking up from her tablet. "But hey, your ship, your rules." The rest of the human delegation filtered in behind her, a mix of diplomats and scientists who at least had the decency to look appropriately impressed by their surroundings. Blake, meanwhile, had wandered over to a wall panel and was squinting at it with disturbing intensity. "We are honored," Vex-Tul began, emphasizing each word, "to welcome Earth's representatives aboard the Celestial Dominance. I trust your journey was." "Is that a Mark 7 neural interface?" Blake interrupted, pointing at a barely visible module in the corner. "Wow, haven't seen one of those since engineering school. We use them as paperweights." Several bridge officers made choking sounds. The Mark 7 neural interface was cutting-edge Zarkonian technology. MS. Blake, one of the human diplomats, warned, "Perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand." Right. "The big scary superweapon you guys wanted to show off." She finally looked up, and Vex-Tul was startled by the intensity in her eyes. "When do we get to see it?" "The Galaxy Render is not some toy to be gawked at," Rexnar snapped. "It is the most sophisticated weapons system ever created." Blake's eyebrows rose slightly. "Aha. And you're sure about that quantum calibration?" Before Rexnar could explode, possibly literally, given his crystalline nature, Vex-Tul stepped in. "Perhaps we should proceed to the demonstration chamber. Though I must warn you, the complexity of our technology may be overwhelming for your species." "Overwhelming?" Sure, Blake was already heading toward the exit. "Quick question, does your fancy weapon have cup holders? Because let me tell you, that's a game changer." Watching her go, Vex-Tul felt the first stirrings of unease. There was something about the way she moved, the way she looked at their technology. Less like someone about to be overwhelmed and more like a predator assessing its prey. Sir Lieutenant Krixvar whispered, "Should we be concerned that she spotted that neural interface? It's designed to be invisible to most species." "It's probably just a lucky guess," Vex-Tul replied, not quite believing his own words. After all, what could a human possibly know about real technology? You want to what Vex-Tul's mandibles clicked so rapidly they almost short-circuited. His translator must have malfunctioned. There was no way he'd heard correctly. Madison Blake leaned back in her chair, boots propped up on the conference table, a gesture that made several Zarkonian officials visibly wince. "We want to test it," she repeated, tossing a small mechanical component between her hands. "You know, take it for a spin, kick the tires, see what you can do." The component, Vex-Tul noted with growing horror, had been part of the conference room's environmental control system exactly 3 minutes ago. Somehow, she'd dismantled it while they were talking. Even more disturbing, the room's temperature control was now working better than before. "The Galaxy Render," Commander Rexnar said slowly, as if speaking to a particularly dim-witted space slug, "is not some primitive projectile weapon. It manipulates the very fabric of space-time." "Cool," Blake replied, now reassembling the component with suspicious speed. "So does my coffee maker back home. What's your point?" The betting pool started almost immediately after the humans left the conference room. The Centaurian ambassador put down 50,000 credits on total human failure. The Nexusians wagered their entire spice reserves that the humans wouldn't even understand the activation sequence. Even the normally reserved quantum monks of Beta Reticulae got in on the action, betting 3 sacred prophecies and a slightly used time crystal on human incompetence. The odds are currently 10,000 to 1 against the humans, Lieutenant Krixvar reported, her bioluminescent spots flickering with amusement. The Zarkonians are offering particularly creative wagers, something about souls and firstborn offspring. Commander Rex-Nar's crystalline form sparkled with smug satisfaction. Of course they are. Did you see their so-called engineer? She probably thinks quantum entanglement is some sort of human mating ritual. She did fix the environmental controls, Vex-Tul pointed out, trying to ignore the nagging feeling in his thorax. By pure luck, Rex-Nar waved all 4 arms dismissively. I've reviewed their technological capabilities. They still use internal combustion engines on their planet. Some of them still think solar power is cutting edge. The most advanced thing they've created is something called social media, and from what I understand, they're not even proud of that. The betting pool grew. The Andromedans offered their secret faster-than-light travel designs, which everyone knew didn't work anyway. The Silicon Collective wagered 12 artificial planets and a slightly defective Death Star blueprint they'd found in an ancient archive. Sir, a junior officer interrupted their discussion, antennae twitching nervously. The humans are requesting access to the weapon's technical specifications. Give them the simplified version, Rex-Nar ordered, the one we use for ceremonial presentations. The officer's antennae now tied themselves in knots. They're asking for the actual specs. MS Blake says, and I quote, "The crayon version is cute, but I need the real documentation." Vex-Tul felt that nagging feeling grows stronger. How did she know we have different versions? Oh, and she also said something about your quantum coherence matrices being 50 shades of wrong, whatever that means. Rex-Nar's crystalline surface developed a small crack. Impossible. She couldn't have accessed those systems. They're protected by our most advanced security. About that, the officer looked like he wanted to molt on the spot. She said your encryption was, adorable and asked if you'd like her to upgrade it while she's here. The betting pool reached fever pitch. The Galactic Bank had to open a special division just to handle the wagers. 3 minor species went bankrupt just placing their bets. The quantum monks added 2 more prophecies and a paradox to their stake. This is perfect, Rex-Nar declared, his smugness now reaching critical levels. Let them try. Let the entire galaxy watch as these primitives humiliate themselves. It will serve as a lesson to all who doubt Zarkonian supremacy. Vex-Tul watched as Madison Blake walked past the conference room window, casually tossing that same component in the air. The environmental controls were now running at 200% efficiency. Sir Krixvar appeared at his side. Would you like to place a bet? Vex-Tul looked at Blake, who caught his eye and winked. That damned human winked at him. No, he said quietly. I think I'll sit this one out. Sometimes being High Commander meant knowing when to get the hell out of the way. What exactly is she doing to our weapon, Chief Scientist Naxvor demanded, all 6 of his eyes bulging as they watched Madison Blake through the observation window. She was practically dancing around the Galaxy Renders control station, fingers flying over multiple interfaces simultaneously while humming something called Sweet Home Alabama. I believe Lieutenant Krixvar said, checking her data pad, she's currently rewriting our base code while eating something called a Snickers bar. The testing chamber had descended into controlled chaos 3 hours ago. Blake had taken one look at their weapon system, laughed for approximately 2.3 minutes straight, and then proceeded to tear into their life's work like a Voraxian beast at feeding time. Stop her, Naxvor shrieked as Blake casually rerouted a power conduit with one hand while unwrapping another candy bar with her teeth. She's going to destabilize the entire system. Actually, a junior technician piped up, our efficiency ratings just jumped 300%. What? Oh, and the power drain is down 75%. What? And she fixed that weird humming noise we could never figure out. What? Would you like a translator upgrade? Krixvar offered helpfully. Your vocabulary seems limited to. I know what means. Through the window, Blake had moved on to the targeting system. She'd somehow hooked up her ancient tablet to their quantum interface using what appeared to be a paperclip and more of that mysterious silver tape, and was now typing with the speed of a caffeinated quantum computer. Our targeting accuracy just improved by 842%, the technician reported. That's impossible. Commander Vex-Tul had arrived, his crystalline form now sporting several stress fractures. The targeting system was already perfect. Tell that to the simulator, the technician replied. Also, she says your quantum coherence matrices were giving her a headache, so she gave them a quick tune-up. We're now operating at efficiency levels our theorists didn't think were possible. Blake's voice crackled over the intercom. Hey guys, quick question, was this supposed to be able to create stable micro-singularities? Because it totally can now. Also, I added cup holders. The room erupted into chaos. Naxvor fainted, his 6 eyes rolling back dramatically. 3 junior scientists began updating their resumes. Someone in the back started quietly praying to the old gods. How? Vex-Tul demanded. How? She's using technology from the Stone Age. Through the window, Blake had moved on to physically modifying the weapon. She'd stripped down to her tank top, revealing arms covered in strange markings, tattoos, someone whispered in horror, and was now elbow deep in the Galaxy Render's core systems. Should we stop her? Krixvar asked, watching as Blake extracted what appeared to be a crucial component, stared at it for exactly 3 seconds, then replaced it with something she'd apparently built from spare parts and an empty energy drink can. Our output just doubled, the technician reported weakly. She's humming again, someone noted. I think it's something called Highway to Hell. Blake's voice returned. Hey, quick heads up, your dark matter containment was kind of sketchy, so I rebuilt it. You can thank me later. Also, who designed your user interface? Because wow, that was not intuitive. I streamlined it a bit. Now it's point and click. Even a Zarkonian could use it. Vex-Tul's crystalline form developed another crack. Oh, and I found this weird oscillation in your quantum field generator. No biggie, just a small chance of accidentally creating a tear in space-time that could have swallowed half the galaxy. Fixed it though. Used some chewing gum and a paperclip. You guys have seriously got to try Earth snacks. They're super useful for engineering. The betting pool had gone silent. The quantum monks were furiously rewriting their prophecies. The Centaurians were trying to quietly withdraw their wagers without anyone noticing. One more thing, Blake continued, now somehow simultaneously typing on 3 different interfaces while drinking something called a Mountain Dew. Your fail-safes were cute, but I added a few of my own. You know, just in case someone tries to use this thing for actual planet killing instead of peacekeeping, which I'm sure none of you nice folks would ever do, right? The silence in the observation room was deafening. Also, I noticed you had some unused processing power, so I installed Doom. You know, for when you're bored between tests. You're welcome. Naxvor, who had just regained consciousness, promptly fainted again. And Blake stepped back from the console, wiping her hands on her jeans. The Galaxy Render hummed with a new, somehow more ominous note. The displays showed power levels and efficiency ratings that shouldn't have been possible according to known physics. What? Vex-Tul asked very carefully, exactly did you do to our weapon? Oh, you know, just some tweaks. Improved the efficiency, fixed some bugs, added some features. Basic stuff. Blake grinned, that terrifying human expression that showed too many teeth. Want to see what it can do now? The entire observation room took one collective step backward. Don't worry, she added, typing in a few commands. I'll start with something simple, like this. The Galaxy Render powered up with a hum that sounded suspiciously like the opening notes of Another One Bites the Dust. Did she just? Vex-Tul whispered in horror. Make our superweapon play human music. That's not the worst part, Krixvar replied, checking her readings. According to these scans, it's now 3 times more powerful than before, twice as accurate, runs on half the energy, and what? And she made it compatible with something called Wi-Fi. In the testing chamber, Madison Blake was already pulling out another candy bar, her eyes gleaming with what they would later recognize as the most terrifying human emotion of all, enthusiasm for technical improvements. So she called out, Who wants to see what else this baby can do? The sound of multiple alien scientists trying to call in sick at the same time was deafening. News spread through the Zarkonian Empire faster than a quantum particle entanglement. High Council members emerged from emergency meetings with their scales various shades of panic-induced chartreuse. The betting pool had completely collapsed, causing 3 minor economic crises and 1 religious reformation among the quantum monks. They've integrated it with something called Bluetooth, reported Admiral Kex-Nar, Rex-Nar's more competent sister. Apparently you can now control the galaxy render with something called a smartphone app. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Again. An app Councillor Vex-Mor's scales turned an impressive shade of puce. Our ultimate weapon, the pinnacle of Zarkonian engineering, can be controlled by an app. It has a 4.8-star rating on their app store. Kex-Nar continued, somehow maintaining her composure. The only complaints are about the user interface color scheme. Blake says she'll fix that in the next patch. The next patch. Oh yes, apparently she's implemented something called over-the-air updates. The weapon can now automatically download improvements. The latest one added something called dark mode and fixed several bugs we didn't even know we had. High Commander Vex-Tul watched as his career, along with the Empire's dignity, crumbled before his 4 eyes. On the main display, Madison Blake was cheerfully demonstrating the weapon's new features to a group of terrified scientists. Look, she was saying, you can even use voice commands now. Hey Galaxy Render, initiate test sequence alpha. The weapon responded with a pleasant chime. Test sequence alpha initiated. Would you like to enable power saving mode? You gave it an AI, someone shrieked. More of a smart assistant, really? Blake shrugged. Nothing fancy. Just basic commands, status monitoring, predictive maintenance. Oh, and it can order pizza. What's a pizza? A junior counselor whispered. Not the point, Vex-Mor roared. The humans have received 17 patent applications for the improvements. Kex-Nar continued. They're calling it Galaxy Render 2.0 now with extra rendering. Their marketing department, helped with the name, Blake's voice chimed in through the intercom. Also, has anyone checked their email? I sent out a user satisfaction survey. The analytics would really help with the next update. How is she accessing our secure channels? Vex-Mor demanded. Oh, right. Should mention that too. Your security was kind of last century, so I upgraded it. You're welcome. Now you've got end-to-end encryption and 2-factor authentication. Much safer. The council's collective blood pressure reached dangerous levels. Don't worry though, Blake continued, apparently oblivious to the mass panic she was causing. I added parental controls too. You know, just in case someone gets any funny ideas about actual weapon deployment. Can't have anyone starting intergalactic wars without proper authorization. That reminds me, who wants to be the admin? I need to set up the permissions hierarchy. Vex-Tul watched as several council members tried to hide behind their chairs. Oh, and the weapon's now part of the Internet of Things. It can sync with your smart home system. Want the lights to dim dramatically every time you power it up? There's a setting for that. The humans, Admiral Kex-Nar said carefully, have offered to license the technology back to us, for a fee. The silence in the council chamber was broken only by the sound of distant sobbing and what might have been someone updating their resume. They're also offering technical support, Kex-Nar added, 24/7 help desk access, though there's a warning that wait times may be longer during Earth holidays. Through the display, they watched as Blake casually demonstrated how to integrate the weapon's targeting system with something called Google Maps. And look, she was saying, if you swipe left, you get a complete diagnostic history. Swipe right for power consumption analytics. Oh, and I added a feature that posts the test results directly to your social media. You guys do have social media, right? No. We should talk about that next. The council members exchanged horrified glances. Their ultimate weapon, their symbol of supreme technological dominance, had been turned into. It's trending on Twitter, Blake announced cheerfully. Also, someone made a TikTok dance about it. Want to see? What have we done? Vex-Tul whispered. Created a viral sensation, apparently, Kex-Nar replied. The merchandise line launches next week. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear the sound of human innovation, and it terrified them to their very core.